Hi, this is Charlie Zeese with Only PVC Pyramids. I'm very happy today to have Toni Hollenbeck with me. Toni lives in North Carolina, has been working with energy for about 35 years, and has a lot of knowledge and background both about energy and also the importance of energizing your food and structuring your water. So we've been talking a lot recently in our other interviews about more esoteric things such as higher consciousness and distance healing and so forth. But I knew that it was time to, and I was very, very grateful when Toni sent me an email describing the positive benefits that she's been receiving with her water and food that she's been structuring with the pyramid. So I thought I'd ask her on today. So Toni, thank you very much for being on with me today. And before we start, would you mind giving everyone a little bit of background about you and how you got started with your energy work?
Sure. Hi, Charlie. Thank you for having me on your show. I grew up in upstate New York and moved to the Chapel Hill area in North Carolina probably about 40 years ago, and started my quest of finding out who I am and why I'm here on this planet. And in the midst of that journey, I started doing energy work, and I became trained in several different energy modalities and learned to distinguish energies and also to do hands-on healing, and did that for many years. And then my life led me to eventually move to the mountains of North Carolina, where I currently live. I'm in the western part of the state. I live in a very small town just outside of Asheville, North Carolina, which is somewhat of a mecca for people who are interested in energy and healing and opening up their consciousness and remembering who they are. Probably about 11 years ago, I met, I actually knew him. I ended up marrying someone that I knew, and I moved to Old Fort. And over the course of our marriage, Dennis's health declined. He had diabetes, and he had several silent heart attacks that equated to one major heart attack. He was not feeling very well, and we went to the doctor, and the doctor indicated that Dennis had a major heart attack, even though there were several small ones. And so sent us to a cardiologist. Cardiologist said, if you want to continue living for any length of time, you're going to need to change your life. And so when we walked out of there, we literally changed our lives. And without knowing about whole food plant-based, we went whole food plant-based. We stopped all meat and dairy and processed foods, and switched over to eating organic. We went to beans and rice and vegetables and just very, very healthy foods. And I really equate that for the additional 3 years that I had with Dennis. Unfortunately, about 2 years ago, he had a massive heart attack, which took his life. Since then, I have learned about whole food plant-based eating and have completely switched to it. In my journey of eating that way, I have lost 60 pounds, and I have, my brain fog is gone.
Yep.
I sleep better for the most part. I'm happier. I just have a lot more energy for life, because one of the things that I've learned is that I'm eating food that is energized. When you're eating food that is processed, whether it be packaged food or dairy or meats and that, they're foods that are not really what our bodies are meant to eat. We were meant to eat whole food, plant-based. There's a lot of research out there, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that.
Sure.
About 4 months ago, I saw my first only PVC pyramid video and became absolutely intrigued because Dennis was very much involved with making pyramids, and we have pyramids all over our house. And I have several copper ones that he made, including one out in one of my raised beds. It's up over the top of it, about
Sure.
8 feet above it. And in fact, the foods that grow in that particular raised beds grow much better than the other ones that don't have the pyramids over them.
That's right. That is absolutely right. I've done the same analysis. I put one of these. We did a controlled study with 2 planter boxes, same soil, same plants. One had a pyramid, one didn't, and the plants grew at least twice as fast. So,
and we heal in when you sit in a pyramid, we heal. So
right.
it just makes absolute sense. And when I'm sitting in my pyramid, well, I'm going to back up just a little bit. Once I started watching Charlie's videos, then I knew that I wanted a pyramid. So I contacted him and we talked, and I wanted one of the clear ones with the sand in it. And so I was able to get one.
Yep. Well, let me stop you there, because people are going to see this clear pyramid and they're going to be excited by it. Toni was one of the most forgiving individuals I've ever known, because for those of you who know, I tried to market this earlier in the year, had a lot of problems with it. She had a problem with hers, and it took me a couple of months, but I'm not making those anymore, but I was able to just find some pieces that would fit properly. The pipe and fittings that I was receiving from my manufacturer just weren't very good. So unfortunately, for those of you who see it and see how beautiful it is, unfortunately, I just don't have the opportunity to do that anymore. So anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, that's fine. And I am grateful that I have, I actually have 2 of them. Charlie did replace the original one because it kept falling on me, which was a minor problem and inconvenience, but as long as I didn't touch it and it stayed upright, I absolutely loved being in the pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
And in the course of one of your videos, you talked about structured water.
Mm-hmm.
And I became very interested in it and just started doing a lot of research. And so what I found was that if you put water in a glass jar and put it in the pyramid and leave it there, I made, not knowing how long to leave it there, I was leaving it there originally for 24 hours. Mm-hmm. In one of my conversations with Charlie, he said that he thought that 24 hours was the minimum. And so now what I do is it's on a rotational basis. I have 4 half-gallon mason jars that I use, and they stay in there until I'm ready to use it. So they get about 2 to 3 days in there. Okay. And the difference, I start out with my town water that I run through a Berkey filter water system.
Perfect, yep.
And then I put it in my half-gallon mason jar. And then because I know that if you put metal inside of a pyramid, it weakens the energy in there.
That's right.
I now put parchment paper with a rubber band around it over the tops of the jars.
Okay. Rather than the mason jar, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then I also have 4 pictures of spirals, sacred spirals, that I have placed on the bottom of that particular pyramid. Mm-hmm. And so I have a sacred spiral inside my, a paper one inside of my pyramid.
Sure.
I love the difference in the taste of the water. I've had other people try it, and one person who has very good well water said that it tastes as good as their well water or even better than their well water. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if I can do that with water and structure water and make it so that it's healthy for my body, why not my food?
Sure.
So I started putting my food in. And I wrote Charlie an email a couple weeks ago saying, Charlie, a word of warning. And the warning was that if you put your food in the pyramid to structure it, do not put it in a pyramid that you have next to your bed. And the reason that I did the word of warning was that as soon as I started putting the food in there, I started not sleeping well.
Hmm.
Either I would wake up at 3 in the morning and not be able to go back to sleep with my body just buzzing. And I thought maybe it was the energy from the smart meters, but I have pyramids at both my smart meter and the window where my neighbor's smart meter comes into my room, into the house. And so, or the other thing was I wouldn't be able to fall asleep until 2, 3, 4 in the morning,
Yeah.
again,
Okay.
because I was buzzing so much.
Sure.
So this was all around the time that Charlie was sending me my second pyramid. When my second pyramid arrived, I set it up in my second bedroom, and just without even understanding that the food was causing all that extra energy in the pyramid that was next to my bed, I just moved everything in there because I thought it's easier access to it. So almost immediately, well, actually immediately, I started sleeping through the night again. And when it took me about 4 or 5 days to make the connection of why my sleep patterns changed. And what I realized was that when you put food in particular into a pyramid to energize it, to structure it, there's so much energy that's involved with what's being given off, which quite often will be the lower energies as the higher energies are coming in. So you've got lower energies being emitted as well as the higher energies. That's what was causing the massive sleep problems for me for almost a month. And when I say massive, I knew that if something didn't change, that my health was going to be seriously
Sure.
harmed, because
Well,
we need good solid sleep. Now with the food in here, I can feel the energy, and I can back up to about 4 feet away from the pyramid when there's food in there, and I feel a strong energy being given off. When
wow.
there's no food in there and just water, it's about 18 to 24 inches, but it's a milder
Hmm.
energy. And at this point, would you like me to move my camera so that?
Yeah. People would love to see what your setup looks like.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so if you get queasy with things moving, hold on, I will get to it. Let's see. How is, okay.
That's working fine. That's
All right.
fine.
What we have here, and I apologize, I will move it as little as possible. This is a watermelon. These are peaches, and those are my half gallons of water. And can you see the
I
my
do the spirals.
my
Sure.
spiral?
Yep.
Okay. So that is working really well. I'm going back to my desk, and I apologize for the movement.
Well, that's all right.
But that way you get to see what it looks
Absolutely.
like. And there are times when I come home from either the farmer's market or the grocery store, and I have my cloth bags that have the food that I purchase. I take everything that has to be refrigerated out, and I put it in the refrigerator, and everything else goes in the pyramid, and it stays there, 1 to 2 days.
Okay.
And I try to leave it in there at least 36 hours.
Okay.
And I really feel a difference, I really feel a difference in the vibration of the food from doing that.
Do you find that there's any problems? For example, you have peaches there, um, with any sort of premature, not rotting, but that they
Over
get soft.
ripening?
Over ripening is the right term. Yeah, when they're
No,
in their pyramid.
no. And that's one of the reasons that I leave the food in there for about 36 hours, is
Yeah.
because um, pyramids can enhance the ripening. I haven't found that it has accelerated it, but it does enhance it. And there is a difference there.
Yes. Yes. Okay. That's right. And then the spirals, that's an interesting aspect. That looks like a 5 spiral to me, that, in 2 dimensions, that you've drawn on those pieces of paper. I'm not sure, but tell me the kind of the purpose of those, and how those, in your view, enhance the process.
The energy coming down through the top of the pyramid is in a double spiral,
Hmm.
from what I've seen and from the research that I've done. The sacred spiral is a anchor for it, as well as it then, well, for every pyramid that we have, there's an unseen reverse pyramid underneath it.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And the energies then come down and go into the ground where it's grounded. And once it goes into the ground and it's grounded, it goes back down. And then there is a connect for every pyramid top, the one, as I just said, the one we see and the one we don't see, there are other pyramids connected to them. So if you look at your background, you'll see how you have your pyramids on the wall. They're all interconnected. And that's the way we are to everything else. Well, the sacred spiral, from my understanding, is a way to direct the energies as they're coming in and then enhance them. So I use it as an enhancement.
Okay. Okay. All right. Let me ask you a few questions about your process. We can separate it between water and food, but you mentioned to me that you're now doing it 2 to 3 days on average. I get a lot of questions about that. How long should I keep it in my pyramid to get it structured properly? And I have not really done the research to have the time that you have done. So could you give the audience a little background on how you settled in on the length of time that you're keeping the water in the pyramid?
One word: intuition.
Okay, good. I like it.
I just find, as I said, I started with the 24 hours. And then in one of my conversations with you, you said that it generally works better the longer you leave it in there. And so I just started playing with it, and my intuition told me that if I rotate it and do one at a time, I was doing 2 in, 2 out, 2 in, 2 out. Mm-hmm. So I'd always, because I like to have my water in the refrigerator and cold, because I like to drink cold.
I do too.
And it just was moving too fast, and it didn't seem to have the amount of time that it needed to be as structured as I wanted it. So again, it was trial and error and then intuition.
Right. Okay.
And the same with how long to leave food. It's intuition.
Yeah. Sure.
Because I don't know. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, do you find that it varies by the type of food that you're putting into the pyramid?
Yes. The denser food, like the watermelon, I've left that in there 3 days.
Okay.
It is now at the point where it does need to be in the refrigerator because I don't want it to begin to rot.
Right.
The smaller foods I leave in for less time. And if it's in a plastic bag, I do try to get it out of the plastic bag. Sometimes I buy organic carrots in plastic bags. I try to get the plastic out as much as possible. Oh, and if I buy seeds, grains, they go in there. And I get those as soon as I come home from the shopping. My first stop is the kitchen, and anything that's in a plastic bag gets removed from the plastic bag and put in glass. I don't have any plastic storage in my house anymore. I only have glass, and most of it is mason jars. And I have some of those Pyrex glass dishes for storage.
Sure.
So everything gets put into a glass jar and then covered with parchment paper and a rubber band to hold it down. And then it gets put into the pyramid. But if it's, say, zucchini and carrots and cabbage and things like that, I leave those in the cloth bag. And they get, actually everything gets left in there as long as possible. I watch it to see I watch it to see. I watch it and I let my intuition tell me when it's time to take the vegetables out. Grains and things that have been in plastic, I try to leave for at least 4 days because they've picked up chemicals from the plastics.
Sure. Okay. And, along that line, I was going to ask you, you mentioned earlier that there's negative energies that are coming out of the food in particular from this process. Last week I learned something that I didn't know before, that, for example, when I was interviewing Lori Sasson, she mentioned that marijuana picks up
Yes.
negative energies, and I didn't know that.
I
So
didn't either.
yeah, so I'm going to ask you this in a more generic fashion. Do you find that even organically grown foods or things like that, are you finding that they have negative energies as well that need to be cleared by the pyramid? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And there's something that I should correct that. Negative energy is, from what I've been reading, is an incorrect term. It's very dense energy. It's really the word that I should be using. And I apologize for having said
well, that's all right.
Negative energies. But so I'm going to switch over to dense energies.
Okay.
Yes, even organic food can have dense energy because the chemicals can drift. If someone is growing organically, but their neighbor, even a mile or 2 miles down the road, is growing commercially and spraying, there is drift. So it can drift in and onto the foods. It's not a lot. It's a very minimal amount. As well as the people who have processed it. If they're having a really bad day, then they have denser energies about them. And not everybody, and because of the foods they eat, the lives they lead, where they are emotionally, they can be carrying a lot of dense energy. And as they're handling it, that energy goes into the food, as well as when you yourself are preparing food. If you're in a negative place, your food's not going to taste as good as when you're in a positive
That's
place.
for sure. Yeah.
And
So,
there are numerous studies to show that.
Absolutely.
So that's part of
ahead.
what I'm getting rid of, is all of that dense energy from the people who have processed it. If the food has has been contaminated in any way, if the food doesn't happen to be organic, I'm working to get all of that off of the food, or as much of it as possible.
Sure. So I think a really key takeaway for me, even today, we try to eat organically as well, but as we were talking off camera, organic doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best thing on the planet for you to begin with. So any food is going to, it sounds like, benefit from being under the pyramid for a reasonable period of time. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, I believe it to be a very fair statement.
Okay.
And I'm seeing a difference in the way I feel eating the higher vibration foods versus just when I first started doing the whole food plant-based. There was an incredible difference, but now the energy level of my food is even that much higher. I've gotten to the point where I eat out possibly once a week, and I'm finding that even that is becoming a stretch for me. It's hard to do because the food is just very low energy food.
Oh, of course. I am really grateful to have a significant other who's a naturopath and has kind of helped me get on that path for healthy eating as well. But we have the same problem. I mean, there's one restaurant in town that we feel comfortable going to, and even then, it's not the greatest around. But if we want to change a pace and want to go out to dinner, that's where we go. But yeah, you're now tempting me. I've got 3 pyramids in the house, so it's not like I don't have one to put my food under going forward. I think I'm gonna seriously try this because you're, as you say, I mean, the organic label really doesn't mean a whole lot. Pesticides can float in from adjoining farms. There's probably negative energies that are possibly picked up from the earth itself and so forth, from the chemicals in the water and the rain and so forth. So I'm gonna give this a serious try because you've convinced me today that this isn't all just about organic labeling. Now,
organic is very good, and I'm not knocking organic at all.
Understand.
It's a huge step up from non-organic food, but I think you can take it even further, is what I want to impart. Sure.
One other thing I wanted to ask you, I don't know if you've done any studies on this with your pyramid. Have you tried putting it off the floor and maybe up a ways on a bench or anything like that?
I'm going to try that next.
Okay.
And the reason that I'm going to try that next is that when I first got my first pyramid from you, I
wasn't a little tricky.
I had taken a wooden chair and cut the legs off of it so that the legs were probably about 8 to 10 inches off the floor, because I can't sit comfortably on the floor and sit cross-legged. But if I'm sitting on a very low chair with some pillows under my feet, it made it very comfortable. And then I was talking with someone at a whole food plant-based potluck dinner this past weekend, and he actually has done a lot of pyramid work. And he said, well, where do you sit in your pyramid? And I said, well, I work to sit right in the center of it. And he said, well, how high up are you? And I told him where I was. And he said, what he has found is that the higher you sit, the stronger the energy is that comes through the top. And so where you're sitting now, where the connectors are, my head was coming up to just about the connectors, but sitting in a full-size chair, I'm now above the connectors like you are.
Right.
And I'm already feeling a big difference. And the other thing, which you say in your videos, which I had tried to do, was to orient to magnetic north.
Correct.
The reason I say try to do was that the compass that I used was a little bit wonky. And I knew
they all are.
So I guesstimated the best that I could from what I knew magnetic north to sort of be. And I found my other good compass, and I was off by about 1.5 inches. And so now my pyramid is oriented to, oh, wait a minute, no, I'm going to back up on it. My chair had been oriented to north, but because of the way I had the pyramid set up in my bedroom, it was in the corner and it wasn't true north. Excuse me, magnetic north. It's now magnetic north, and the chair is magnetic north, and it makes a huge difference.
It does. It really does. We've tested that with a Lecker antenna, and just sitting in it, you can feel the difference. So you're reconfirming to everyone that the importance of doing that. So that's
get yourself a good compass.
I'm doing a lot of expos right now, and the compass app that I use on my cell phone doesn't seem to work very well in these buildings because there's so much magnetic and electromagnetic interference. So you're right. I may want to buy something that's a little bit
more old-fashioned one.
Yeah, that's right. It would work the best. So.
And that way you always have it. So if and when the power ever goes out for a short time or a long time, you've got something you hold in your hand.
Right. Well, is there anything else you'd like to cover here? I mean, I would think that people have learned a lot today, but let's throw it open. There may be topics that we haven't touched on yet that you might want to let people know about in terms of your research, or are there particular foods that this works better on or worse on? I don't know.
I'd like to open a whole new topic.
Okay, perfect.
Dennis, my deceased husband, had a box of crystals, and they had been programmed by him. And I still communicate with him. And I had asked him, can I use these crystals? And he said, no, you can't because they're programmed. And I asked him if I could change them. And he said, no, you can't. They have to be done in a particular way to reprogram them. So when I got the pyramid, I asked him if they could then be reprogrammed in the pyramid. And he said, yes, they can be. So I took the box of crystals, and then I went around the house and I picked up the crystals that had been setting in various places that I just have always left alone except to dust.
Right.
And I put all of the crystals in there, as well as the rocks in the house that are grounding rocks in the house. Mm-hmm. And I put them in there, and I think they were in there probably about 4 to 5 days. And I would check with him every day. And so he was able to do reprogramming of those crystals through the pyramid. And so now I use those crystals, and many of them happen to be pyramids.
Right.
throughout the house. And I have, I believe, 17 pyramids, whether they're crystal, PVC, copper, and I think I have one other format, and I'm not remembering what it is, throughout my house as well as out in my, lucite, because I
Okay.
have the 2 capstones.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, so I have, I think, 17 of them throughout my house. So I feel really grateful that I was able to finally reprogram those crystals, and now I can use them.
It's fascinating you bring that up, because the Russian research indicates that they've taken all sorts of crystals. Water is a crystal. Salt is a crystal. They've used salt to energize and put into jails, and the prisoners become, much more peaceful. But anyway, they've also taken crystals, energized them in the pyramid, and then put them out in the public, and they've had this dramatic decrease in communicable diseases. They put them in the crops in the fields, and the crops grow better. So yes, that's something that I haven't talked about yet with anyone, and I'm glad to see that you're doing that. And I'm more happy, quite honestly, that you got the guidance that this was the appropriate place to get them reprogrammed, because I think this geometry, being as interdimensional as it we've now discovered it is probably the right geometry to do that with. So
I agree, and so does he from the other side.
I love it. I love it. So always nice to have confirmation from the other side, I'll tell you.
Yes.
I wish I had that ability, and maybe soon I will. I don't know. It seems like I'm getting more and more able to bring that information in with the pyramids. So, well, that's fascinating. Well, it may be time to wrap up. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we sign off?
No, that covers just about everything.
Okay, Toni. Well, Toni, I really appreciate your coming on with us today. And, as I say with a lot of folks who I interview with, I want to have you back in the future if you do, especially some new experiments with putting the food up and water up on a higher plane and seeing. I agree with you that the center of the pyramid, from our research, is probably the place of greatest energetic activity.
Mm-hmm.
So you may find that that things work even better up there. But I always appreciate people, as you did, writing me and giving me insights that I have not had a chance to do myself. So for those of you out there, Toni is willing to believe to answer questions that you may have about structuring food and water. And Toni, I'll put up your email address at the end of the video and also down in the comments section. So those of you who are interested, please feel free to email Toni and to ask her. She's been kind enough to offer to answer any and all of your questions that she can. So I thank you all for watching today. As always, please tell your friends about Only PVC Pyramids. Subscribe if you're not already a member. We're just a few members shy of hitting that 5,000 mark. So I'd love to be able to announce that we've made it up to 5,000 members here in the next week or so. So I thank you all for watching, and you have a great day.
Thank you.